So I started watching this video on YouTube that was recommended to me by kind of a friend, kind of a guy that I was trying to date at one point. And it basically, yeah, it covers, I think, the topic of why men get such terrible dating advice really, really well. Um, but I feel like it's incomplete in that it still overemphasizes the idea of you have flaws that you need to conceal, therefore you know what I mean? The better you are at concealing your flaws, the more likely you are to find a partner. And I'm going to argue with this very strongly because I've and you don't have to believe me, just stop and look around at the married couples you know and really look at them and ask yourself, what flaws do these people have? And let me tell you, like, sometimes I used to feel jealous of my married friends, my married female friends, and be like, oh, why did you find a man and I can't? And then I looked at their husbands and I was like, well, if I was willing to date a guy like that, I'd be married too by now. And, but I mean, what it proves is that women can be with somebody who has flaws. There are fat married guys, there are stupid married guys, there are jerky married guys, there are all kinds of married guys out there. And, so don't be assuming that that's a disqualifier, because really, relationships are not made out of perfection. Then that's not what relationships are or do. The piece of knowledge that I think our society has lost as the result of being so intensely individualistic is that having relationships at all, relating to others, is actually natural. Your desire to have a relationship with another person is natural. And it matters for you to accept this. Because if you go around believing that you're trying to manufacture a thing that doesn't naturally occur, instead of trusting that there is a natural undercurrent to what you're doing, that's going to trip you up. That's actually going to create a very negative, toxic mindset for you. However, I have encountered people who had very negative, toxic, insecure mindsets who still managed to form relationships anyway. So even then, you're good. As screwed up as you think you are, you're probably you're not disqualified from the race at all. Um, and certainly people will say, well, sure enough, if looks don't matter, then how come, such and such guys are better at being with women? Well, the truth is, if you think that you're good looking, you're more likely to take the necessary steps it takes to form a relationship. And there are concrete steps you can take with a woman that will greatly, infinitely increase your odds of forming a relationship with her. And I can say this, I think with the level of knowledge that I have, having been in and out of like 11 different relationships in my life, and the simple fact of being a woman, there are things I can tell you that definitely increase your odds of forming a relationship, and things that also encourage your odds of maintaining it over the long term. And they have absolutely nothing to do with money. Most of the guys I've dated in my life, they were terminally unemployed. Some of them were like drug addicts, and some of them had severe mental problems. And certainly you could say, oh, but Shona, you're not a Stacy. And this is what some people will say to me, oh, Shona, when we talk about women, we're not talking about women like you, we're talking about the big boobed, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, etc. Well, yeah, if your ideas about what sort of woman you want to be with are that narrow, yeah, okay, I can't really help you there. But if you can be a bit more open-minded and maybe give, I don't think I'm an uggo, but if you're willing to give uggos a chance, obviously you increase your odds. Now, and also, just because you find a particular sort of person ugly, it doesn't mean you'll find all of that kind of person ugly. Like, I recently ran into a guy who I thought I would never feel attracted to. Actually, it's happened to me a few times where I've met guys and thought, I'll never feel attracted to this guy, and then I ended up feeling attracted to them anyway. And I can tell you how they even did it. They drove me home. They drove me home. And certainly, it helped that I was comfortable enough with them that I would allow them to drive me home, but the fact that they took the time to drive me home and they spent time talking with me, like actually conversing with me about themselves, already that created a very good foundation for me to develop feelings for them and to feel attracted to them, even though initially I was looking at them thinking, they're okay, but they have a lot of traits that I don't like as well. And I still ended up being deeply attracted to them because they were willing to converse. And certainly you might say, well, oh, I'm not that talkative, that's very hard for me. It doesn't have to be face to face. Like, if you message a woman, the mistaken advice a lot of people give you is just be confident. But you don't need to be confident. A lot of the guys that I've formed relationships in the past were horribly lacking in confidence, and their confidence was not a drawback in my sight. If anything, I kind of found it cute that they were that shy and everything. And, so if you're having trouble communicating well, don't worry about it. Just find ways to keep, if you can't stand to talk about yourself that much, ask her questions about her. That's even better, because what you're letting her know is you care about what's going on inside of her and what's going on in here. And again, you're attempting to form a relationship. And relationships, and I say this over and over again when people ask me about this, they're characterized by the ability to relate. So even if you can't handle talking about yourself with her yet, get her to talk about herself. Ask her, leading questions, and certainly there are some women who will just ignore you, yeah, but those women aren't for you. There's other women who will actually be nice and give you a chance. And the thing, again, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, but I'm not very attractive. It doesn't matter, because let me tell you, the guys that I typically find myself feeling attracted to are, okay, one of the massive things that has gone wrong with media is that whenever there's a sort of, nerdish boy in a movie, they'll show him getting decked by a bunch of bullies, and then the bullies will scream at him, "No girl will ever like you." Well, that's how would a muscle-bound idiot bully know anything about what a woman thinks? Like, if you as a man don't really understand how women think, why would a man with impaired emotional abilities have any better idea than you do? Like, of course not. The way you'll learn about how women really think is actually by listening to us, by talking with us about what we want. And, I could even say that that's one of the basic steps of forming a relationship with a woman. You have to be willing to sit down and say, okay, what are you looking for in a relationship? What are you looking for in a partner? And some women, if they're insecure of themselves, won't give you a straight answer. Or it might already be that they like you, so they're afraid to really tell you. But, sitting down with a woman and finding out what she wants, or, like, that's a massive coup. Like, a lot of guys, that I've dated, when I've sat down with them and told them that I'm, unhappy with some aspect of the relationship, they've gotten angry and defensive, when actually they could have listened and, learned right away what I was wanting or needing from them. And sometimes it was very simple. Something basic, like I just wanted them to spend a little more time with me. Or I wanted, it's rarer that I've wanted more personal space. It's usually the case that I've wanted more time. But that's the thing, all women are different, and you'll only know what they want if you actually talk to them. And certainly you might imagine yourself being, like, ending up as their slave or something. No, most emotionally healthy women will be willing to negotiate with you. So they'll be willing to tell you directly what they want. And they'll also be open to hearing your side of the story. And that is the sort of partner you should seek to have. And and even if you're talking to a woman who is being unreasonable, that doesn't have to be the end of the story. You can actually say, well, I think that your demands are a little bit too severe. Can we look for something that's fair to both of us? That's the power of communication. People misunderstand and think that communicating well is about being very talkative or, being very confident or knowing the right words to say all the time. And really, no, communication is actually when you're doing it well, it's really about the ability of just taking what's in here and making it come out of your mouth. Even if it's not perfect, like, it's better than nothing. Because, part of the reason extroverts do better in relationships typically than introverts do is because they're communicating. Even if they're talking too much sometimes, at least they're telling you who they really are and what they really want. And so, like, and I'm not saying become overly talkative, because that's not really a good thing either. That, like, even if women will accept a chatty guy, over the long run it can result in problems where she might not be able to say what she really needs, and so she ends up over-dominated by the guy, and that can lead to a lot of really unhealthy dynamics between the both of them. And, you might be a really insecure, chauvinistic guy thinking, but why wouldn't I want to totally dominate a woman? It doesn't work out well for either party, because, as I've said, relationships are characterized by the ability to relate. And you might not believe this, but you will be much more happy and satisfied being with a woman who is whole and complete than one that is just going to do whatever you want. The reason you want a partner rather than just a big pillow, one of those dakimakura, or a robot, is because human beings can have their own opinions. They can show you things that you can't see on your own. They can share things with you, and they can understand you in ways that someone couldn't if they were only working to obey you. And, so again, this thing of allowing both parties within the relationship to have the freedom to just be themselves, flawed and with all of their strengths, but themselves, is so important. And the practical step you can take in this direction, you know what, I'll delineate, I think, what I think of as the 3 basic steps of relationship formation right now. And I feel like it stands to a video in itself. But, approach the woman. Talk to her. Like, it doesn't have to be about anything in particular, but just talk to her and spend time with her. And so that way, she's already creating an emotional attachment with you. You don't have to do that much, really, for somebody to form an emotional attachment to you. You just have to be present. Now, the second thing you can do, and this is this is a controversial thing for me to say, but you have to tell her how you feel. You have to tell her how you feel about her. You have to be direct and tell her that you find her attractive, not as a friend, but as a woman. You don't have to do this immediately, but you do have to do it at some point. And in fact, I recommend delaying it. I recommend delaying it for at least a few months of knowing her. And I realize that's a risk, because in the meantime she might get snapped up by someone else. But the truth is that, as I've said, true relationships come out of relating. You want to get to know each other really well, and that way, whatever you form will come from an authentic place of knowing each other, rather than just having preconceived notions about each other. Because when you don't really know somebody, it's very easy to persuade yourself about who they are without really knowing. And that again, it causes massive problems in relationships. I've been through this myself, where I've met a guy, and he seems to be absolutely ecstatic about me, and I'm absolutely ecstatic about him. But then we get to know each other, and we realize, like, he realizes I'm not who he thought I was, and I realize that he's not who I thought he was. And part of the problem was that I was growing up at a time when pretending in the initial phases of a relationship was considered more normative. But having been through that experience a number of times, I actually like it when I meet a guy and he's really blunt and honest with me about his flaws, because then I know what I'm getting myself into. I know what I'm dealing with, number one, and number two, I know that he's a truth teller. So when he does go on to compliment me and say good things about me and tell me how he feels about me, I know that he's saying what he really thinks. I know that he's not just making something up so that he can try to own me. And that's another thing. Like, a lot of guys, when they crack onto a woman, when they hit on her, and she rebuffs them, they think that she's rebuffing them. Really, a lot of women, a lot of smart women who are interested in a serious relationship will actually immediately dismiss a man who they can tell is hitting on them. Not because they don't like him, but because they can tell that he's putting on a performance instead of being himself. They can tell that he's being dishonest. So again, he's not showing what he really feels and really thinks. He's behaving this way to sort of try to trick the woman into being with him. And women don't like that. Surprise, surprise, we don't like being deceived. We like honesty. So again, the guys that I've met who I didn't initially feel physically attracted to at all, but they made headway with me, it was, again, partly because they were so brutally honest about themselves that I couldn't help but think, okay, this guy is honest. And granted, it didn't always work out that well for me, but, and the third step that I would talk about is you do have to sit down and have that conversation about what do we want from each other. Because if one of you wants to settle down and the other wants to party, of course you're going to have problems. Not all women are party animals, not all women are interested in settling. All women want different things. Some women want kids, some don't. And so it would be a mistake for you to go into a relationship with somebody not knowing what you really want from each other. Now again, I'll remind you, relationships are a normal thing to have. Your desire to have a relationship and to feel cared about is not wrong. But, and women do actually, not in all cases, but in many cases do actually want to settle down. And in fact, a lot of the women who say that they don't want to typically will have this long-term experience of trying to form deep relationships with people in their life and being disappointed because they were hurt, or the person that they tried to relate to was unreliable or callous, or, was being phony, and they're frustrated and they're sad and they're angry. And if you can offer them honesty and truth, they're much more likely to consider you. And in all of this, I use tentative language because there are no guarantees. What makes one human being attracted to another is incredibly abstract. And it's in some ways it is a bit of a numbers game, in that you do have to find someone with whom you have that biological compatibility. However, the fact is that biology is always on your side. If it wasn't, the human race would have gone extinct a very long time ago. So it is the truth that you will have to sometimes talk to a vast number of different women, maybe lower your standards a little, and give people a chance when you might not have otherwise done so if you really do want to find someone. But at the same time, don't settle. Don't force yourself to be in a relationship with someone you're not sure about. What I mean is take the time to get to know a lot of different women and then see what happens. Because, yes, again, the place where deep relationships, real relationships come from is not the way you look or what you have or any of these other things. It really comes from that place of relating, of being vulnerable with another human being. And I get that that's hard, because we live in a culture where men, and increasingly women too, are taught that it's not okay to be vulnerable, that you have to be strong and tough and not need anyone. But it's a lie. It's crap. It's pseudo-scientific nonsense. The truth is that people need people to be mentally healthy. If anything, from lockdowns we can learn that being alone too much is not good for anybody. It's not good for anyone. And so your desire to have a relationship is actually healthy. Don't lean into it to the point where you become needy. Still cultivate your own life and your own interests, of course. But by the same token, don't think of it as a weird thing for you to do, to actually spend time with a woman that you like. And again, you don't have to do it. Like, even if she refers to you as a friend at one point, that doesn't mean your case is over. There are guys I know who I would characterize as friends. If somebody asked me who they are in my life, I would say they're my friend. But actually, I'm open to dating them. If they asked me, I wouldn't necessarily say no. I mean, okay, admittedly, I'm kind of emotionally hung up on someone, so I'm not 100% open. But again, that's no one's fault. That's no one's fault. That's just how things emerge naturally. So again, if you get rejected by a woman, never take it personally, because it can absolutely be just about okay, when a woman rejects you, it's not always your fault. Sometimes it's just what's going on in her. Maybe she's already attached to someone, or maybe she's got some emotional problems in her life. Maybe she's had a difficult relationship with her father and she's having trouble trusting men in general. But don't take it personally, and you don't have to blame her either. Sometimes it's just how life works out. You know, I feel like there's other advice I could offer. Um, because, the whole thing of talking too much is something that can be examined in of itself. And, you know, it, but don't be afraid to take chances because people can surprise you. And frankly, there are guys who I know right now who have what I would consider to be flaws, but even then, I'm not 100% against dating them, really. Um, I would possibly want to sit and talk with them about these behaviors of theirs, but I don't, you know what I mean? Even then, I haven't ruled them out. So, again, if you're thinking, oh, I'm too bad, I'm too gross, I'm too this or that, you know, if you haven't showered in a week, okay, go take a shower, but even then, somewhere out there, there's a woman who likes stinky guys. I'm sure there's at least some women who like man smells, and frankly, when I've really, really liked a guy, like really liked him, I've kind of grown to like his smells. But, again, all women are different. You have to talk to them and find out what they want for yourself. If you like a woman, go and talk to her. Find out what she wants. And don't, frankly, when a guy actually does take the time to talk to me and to express interest in me, even if I don't like him, I tend to respect him for having had the courage to tell me what he really felt, you know? Even if I don't want a relationship, I respect that he took the time, you know? And yeah, admittedly, not all women will think the way I do. Some are, women have their own problems. We have our own problems, and that much has to be taken for granted. But that should be more hope for you, because if women aren't perfect and you still want them, then that means that women can also want imperfect men too. It goes both ways.